Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 138 of the Data Talk podcast. Today, we're excited to learn from Christine Fletcher, Vice President in Biostatistics at GSK, where she serves as a senior leader in statistics, biotechnology, and drug development. We actually recorded the show right before the COVID-19 lockdown, and right after she was honored by the Women in Data UK as one of the top women working in data science. Here's our conversation. So, Chrissy, you got an amazing award, being named one of the 20 women in data by the Women in Data UK organization. And I just wanted to find out a little bit about how that happened and a little bit more about your work.
Yeah, it's a fantastic achievement to get that award and to be recognised. So I work in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm a statistician by trade, and I've been in the industry for nearly 30 years. And I love being a statistician. I love the work I do. I'm very passionate about the role that statisticians can have and using our analytical skills, our problem-solving skills to help inform how we develop new medicines. So the last few years, I've been very active both within my companies that I've worked with, but also in the industries that I support. So I've been a very passionate role model for making sure that biostatisticians have a key voice at the table. And we sort of have increased our role over the last few years with the increased use of advanced methodologies, increased access to data, for example. And we really want to make sure that we're utilising our statistical skills to the best of our abilities. So I'm a member of a industry association called EFSPI, which is the European Federation of Statisticians in the Pharmaceutical Industry, and where we really have been promoting statisticians to really sort of embrace data science, the use of technology, how we might use AI and ML in the future to support the work we have been doing in terms of the more complex study designs that we're now seeing in our industry. So, last year I was very fortunate to be recognised for some of the activities that I've been participating in. And again, I think my passion shows to all that work with me that I'm a strong advocate for women and sort of, stepping up and trying to make sure that we have significant roles in leadership. They're not easy to come across, but again, at the end of the day, it's sort of taking the confidence to step up and, having a strong voice at the table. But again, that's just one aspect of diversity that we're all trying to grapple with. In the industry that I work in, the pharmaceutical industry, there are many good role models for women in data and technology. So I think I'm one of the first pharma models maybe to be recognised for this area. So it's, again, a fantastic opportunity for me to try and encourage more in the future in our industry. People who have a background in maths and stats, we can go into a variety of different industries, finance, banking, the social media kind of things. So I think pharma has got a role to play in making sure that we can see top talent coming through our industry in the future. So that's my role, I believe, is sort of promoting this part of the use of women in data and technology.
Can you talk about a little bit more about your work in the pharma space using stats, using data? Because I think that there's a lot of very amazing, smart data scientists that are out there, and those who are just coming out of school, who are right now kind of exploring different industries to join. And I was wondering if you can talk specifically to biotech, the work that you're doing, because that's actually an area that we haven't really covered here on the Data Talk show.
Yeah, sure. So as a statistician in the pharmaceutical industry, there are a variety of different roles you can play. You can be in the preclinical space. You can be looking at how do diseases evolve over time. You can be looking at some of the biological systems and using modelling and simulation to understand how we find targets for the future. And then there are statisticians in the clinical space, and that's where most of my history has been, where we are designing clinical studies. That is meaning we're actually looking at new medicines to improve the lives of patients. And we have to do a series of clinical trials. And there are different phases of drug development that we go through. And what we're trying to do now is speed up that process. Can we use more innovative trial designs? So can we go from a very early phase study to a confirmatory study? But what kind of evidence do we need to do that? Can we actually reuse data? So, for example, we may have existing databases that have studied certain disease populations. Well, could we use that as a control arm and reduce the number of patients that we need in our clinical trials? These are all very important questions that we're trying to grapple with. But we are in a very regulated environment. So we have to talk to our regulatory authorities and ensure that they will be accepting the evidence that we generate from these type of studies. And when we are in late phase drug development, we have to look at, well, how robust is our decision making? What is the probability of success? So we're looking at much more quantitative decision making across the life cycle. So when we go from study to study, we want to inform our clinical teams, what's the likelihood that we're going to be successful and are able to develop a medicine that is safe and effective? And then when a product is approved and patients are treating it in the marketplace, we obviously have a lot of post-marketing commitments to make sure that product is safe. So statistics can play a key role in following the how a product is used in the market. So what kind of patients get exposed to the product? Do they see the same efficacy that we saw in our clinical trials? Could there be new uses of that medicine? It might be able to treat other indications. So we're using, again, data mining techniques to explore. So a lot of it's coming down to more predictive analytics. So we really need people with good maths backgrounds to understand how we model data. What are some of the parameters that we're going to need to assess? What are some of the distributions that we're going to need to explore? So that's where mathematics really comes into play. And statistics is really measuring a lot of the uncertainty that we see in data. And how robust is that data? What kind of assumptions do we need to make? What additional data sources can we use to help replicate our findings?
Can you talk about that very difficult space that you're in, where you are trying to constantly innovate, develop new medicines, new treatments, but also being in a very regulated space and handling a lot of very private data?
Yes, so data privacy is paramount in our industry. We've had new regulations, a couple that came out a couple of years ago, where we really have to be very, very careful. And we treat patient level data with the utmost respect and high regard. So we deal with a lot of anonymized data. We do collect data from patients. We have to understand that data, but we protect patients' confidentiality and patient privacy. So we de-identify data. We look at, we only use data that we need for our analysis. So we really have, over time, changed the way we collect data from patients. Years ago, we used to collect, for example, the date of birth. Well, actually, we don't need the full date of birth for our research. We might need to know the age of a patient. So we really have made sure that we are aligned to all the regulations, and at any time when we're using our data, that data is very well protected, and it is highly regulated, as you said. So the regulations have changed over time, and everybody understands that. That there are often stories in the literature about data becoming available, people leaving papers on trains or whatever. We obviously, a lot of our data is electronic, so there's a lot of security involved to protecting that data. So no patient should ever worry about coming into studies, because again, there are many controls in place to keep that data highly protected.
What sort of data or even new data sources are you excited about that you think will help contribute to developing new treatments and new medicines?
So there's a lot of genetic information. So with the advent of being able to sequence DNA, and the cost of that has really reduced over recent years. So we're really trying to get to what patients would really benefit from new drugs, and why do some patients respond and others don't. So with the increased use now of genetic information and this is very large data that we have. So, it could be millions of data points that we can collect on patients. So, and that is very sensitive information that is very, very protected. But by using some predictive analytics, we're now able to understand what are some of the genetic biomarkers that will help us to maybe identify patients ahead of being treated, that they're more likely to actually respond to treatment. But also on the safety side, when we're looking at some of the safety signals, we might be able to better understand what patients' characteristics may lead to some of the safety concerns that we see on the marketplace today. So can we sort of try and predict those ahead of time? So it is about taking some of the genetics and also translational sciences, which is where we're modelling some of the preclinical to clinical systems that we have in place. So again, better understanding the data we have before we go into human clinical trials. And then as we get into clinical trials, if we can reduce the size of our studies by better predicting patient groups that are actually going to respond, we can see larger treatment differences, which means we can actually study a smaller group of patients because they will hopefully be more homogeneous in their patient response. So that's where we're trying to go to, is better predicting who might respond. But again, how reliable is that data? How is that data collected? Is it objective data? Some of the conditions that we treat, we're asking patients on how they feel via patient-reported outcomes. That can be very subjective. So we do want to try and rely on more objective endpoints as much as possible. In addition, the digital data, we have an abundance of data. Data is all around us. But how do we actually use some of the new collection systems like the PROs or a mobile phone? We have body parts that we can measure with sensors. That can create, again, millions of data points. What are we trying to measure? So we need analysts who can actually take a step back. What is the question we're trying to address? How can we then collect data to address that question? And then when we do collect that data, we need to then analyse it according to, again, good statistical practice. And we do that, again, by pre-specifying our analyses. It's a cross-functional effort. Lots of different specialists are involved. So statisticians work alongside clinicians, biologists, chemists to make sure that we're all applying our scientific knowledge and expertise to get, again, that new product to market as quickly as we can. And we know where that product could give the best value to patients.
I mean, it's pretty exciting right now, just the amount of health data that's available. But I guess there's like a huge challenge there, because you're just saying like you have so many data points that are being now available, especially if people give you permission to like analyze their health data from their phones. But like you were saying, like it's about knowing like what am I actually trying to do with this data?
Yes. So even data can help us across the life cycle. And you might want to target different data sources depending on where you are in the life cycle of a product. So, for example, a new product in early phase, well, we want to study patients in a controlled setting. Whereas if we're on the marketplace, we might want to use some of these tools to help us better understand how patients are actually being measured and responding to our treatments. But for those in clinical development, our trials are becoming more virtual. Do we need patients to come into the clinics every day? If patients live 2 hours away from their doctor's surgery, it's an awful ask to travel in every day or every week. So we are looking at more decentralized clinical trials where we can collect data using some of these devices. But again, understanding what are we collecting, how often we need to collect it. So at the end of the day, we do have the data in a robust way with high quality, with very minimal missing data, so we can actually address the questions that we want to ask.
I love how self-aware you are and the questions that you're asking about the data sources. I was wondering if maybe you can give some advice for data scientists who are all of a sudden given a huge set of data to work with. Some of the questions that they need to be asking themselves to make sure that the data is accurate, reliable, and also being aware of what are some of the biases that might be here?
Yeah, so yeah, I understand that. Yeah, data scientists now, that it's easy to get a data set and go straight off to, oh, I'll go and analyze it. And I think the danger is you could end up coming up with some results which really are confounded by things that you haven't thought about very carefully. So as you said, we can get lots of data sources. We need to think about, when we look, we need to be clear on the questions we want to address. So that's sometimes the challenge, is what is it we're trying to address? And then, because we have so much data, which data source actually is best to address that question? And there are potential biases that you do need to think about. Some data sources will be limited because of the way the data is being collected. Was it on a sample of patients? Are they representative of the patients you're wanting to think about in terms of your questions? So we need to, and how reliable was that data collected? Is it, again, years ago you'd use paper, gone are those days. So how does the data get from source to the database that we're looking at? And I think data scientists need to make sure they don't jump right to the analytics. When we do have data sources, how much of it is complete? So data quality is really key. We need to make sure, for example, that data is actually true, accurate, and reliable. So, what was the process for how that data was collected, obtained? Was there any cleaning done on that data? So, what documentation might exist? With the electronic data now becoming very much a key element, how do system changes impact that data? Because obviously we work with digital tools all the time. So a data scientist had to think about all these aspects, and then they want to get to a point where they can understand the data source, so they can see what they've got in front of them. They understand some of the limitations, and it is clear to not to make some sort of conclusions that can't be then validated by the data that we have. And it's good to know what those limitations are and be honest about it and transparent about it. But despite that, we might still need to make some assumptions about what we do have in order to progress with some analysis. And data scientists can look at the quality of that data by looking at the distributions of the data points we have. So what are some of the variables or parameters that we have? Are there any derivations in that data, and how are they derived? Or is it true source data as of the point of collection? So these things, though, can all be dealt with in a systematic way. Often it's about planning ahead of time, understanding, talking to the data owners about how they have provided data, if you haven't obviously collected it yourself directly, and just making sure that we're doing all the right things for managing that data in terms of security, data privacy, and then making sure that when we do use that data, we are doing our own quality assurance and quality control on what we do with that data, so we don't, again, create new biases in terms of our analytics.
What do you look for when you are bringing someone on your team? What are some of those skills, traits that you find to be very valuable for a data scientist working in the pharma space?
So I think for again, that's changed over time. So for the new world, the today's world, it is people who've got, again, good technical skills. I think you do need a strong foundation in your technical capabilities, but you also need to have a good voice at the table. You need to have good communication skills. Communication skills are not soft skills. They're not nice to have. They have become essential parts of being successful. So we need people who can communicate with others, which may be inside their own speciality or other experts from other disciplines. We need people who can translate what they hear into questions that they can and to sort of write analysis plans and protocols to understand what it is we're trying to address. So there's communication skills, both verbally but also written skills. We need people who are good problem solvers. We need people to be sort of have energy to sort of be faced with problems and find logical ways to walk through that problem. But I think we also need people who can be nimble on their feet and quick thinking, because the industry today is very dynamic. But also we need, again, people who can adhere to some processes, especially because we're very regulated. So we need people to understand the context that they're working in. And we really do believe strongly in ethics and again, trusting and respecting the way we are dealing with our data sources in particular.
I like that you touched on the importance of communication skills, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that. Some of the things you've learned in your career that has helped you communicate not only with your colleagues, especially when people are challenging your insights, and also with leadership as you are presenting something that is very important to the business.
Yeah, so communication skills grows as you grow your career, but I think people should focus and develop that as a skill set. It's not something that you should just put to one side. It does take nurturing. I've learned through experience by presenting to colleagues is a really good way of helping you to grow your confidence in sort of talking about a subject. So trying to explain problems is a good way to build your confidence, but also being open to feedback. So feedback is very constructive. So if you are reaching out and giving presentations, or you're in a business kind of setting, making a pitch, for example, ask for feedback. How did you do? Was your message very clear? Did you touch on the right points? It's easy to maybe also sometimes use complicated and tech terminology, when actually we need to make sure we keep it simple and we don't sort of overburden people who might not understand what we're talking about. So as data scientists and statisticians, it's making sure we have a strong value proposition when we're talking to people. And as you do more, and again, practice does make you perfect. So I think the more you find opportunities to do that in an informal sense, but also, we do need to be talking about the great work we do. And there are many opportunities like conferences and scientific meetings where you can share the work that you're doing, and in a non-competitive way. So I think it's also helpful for people to build on that confidence and also learn from other colleagues who are in a similar situation as you, either from within your own company or from another institution.
How do you kind of nurture grit and creativity and innovation in your team, and try to prevent competition and and encourage more collaboration?
Yeah, we live in very complex and dynamic environments. There are often quite people with very similar skill sets, but maybe with a different focus in pharma. So I think it is about being as collaborative as possible. We all have to work together. I think we all add value in different ways. So my style is very collaborative. I think I've always been someone to bring people together, to nurture that opportunity to partner as closely as possible. Quite often companies can be large and you can work in silos, and that's sometimes where you create duplication. You don't even realize another group is doing exactly the same as you, and that's really inefficient. So again, it takes it takes confidence to reach out, to learn about where do you work, who are you working with, who are your key partners, who could you be collaborating with. In fact, many people do sort of change roles over time in our industry. That you may start off in a data scientist role, for example, and go into a very different role in terms of it could be on a clinical project. And I know people from different disciplines can also move around a bit. So it is about getting different experiences over time, challenging yourself. Am I learning something? And I think I've always felt I've been challenged, not on a daily basis, but very regularly, because I want to learn. I want to do the best I can, and to do that, I need to be putting myself out in a situation where it's new to me. So you build expertise over time. You will make mistakes, and it's not a problem to make a mistake in my mind, as long as you learn from it. So we don't know everything, and you'll never know everything. The methodology, science evolves over time. So we need to keep learning, keep applying our skills. And again, the partnerships and collaborations we have are very rewarding, both professionally and personally.
I love that you're all about collaboration and bringing in people who are just hungry, who want to keep learning, growing, people who are curious. But sometimes there might be seasons where people are feeling less curious. They just want to get their job done. And I'm kind of curious about how you navigate those periods and encourage high performance and keep them motivated, especially when you can't be 100% all the time.
No, and I fully appreciate myself. We have all periods of our times when we have other priorities outside of work. And I completely respect that. What we want though is people to at least be prepared to work as hard as they can when they are able to, and to give people the opportunity when they're having a difficult time to know that we're thinking of them, and that we can adjust our workload around those, again, challenging times. So it is about, there are ups and there are downs, and life throws a lot of things at us. But at the end of the day, we want to try and navigate through those challenging times, have the support around, and I do try to provide support to people. I'm happy to give people more time. We can renegotiate timelines. There's always a way forward in my mind. It's all about, but if you don't talk to people, no one knows. As a line manager, I often say to people, I'm not a mind reader. I meet with people virtually. They might not be face to face. So I'm here to help you. I'm here to make sure that we can do whatever we can to support you to do the best job you can. But so let's have honesty about what is going on. And I know some people don't want to share some things that are outside of work, and I totally respect that as well. But the more we can just get to know each other, understand what we're trying to do, know what we're trying to achieve, and again, there's always a team around us to help us get there. And again, we're all human. We all need support at different points in our lives. So just talk about it, be open. That's my sort of strategy.
I wonder if you can kind of talk to why is mentorship so important to you, and what are the ways that you're building up this next generation?
I think everybody should have a mentor. I think they're so valuable at every phase of a career. Mentors can be someone completely outside of your work environment. They can be in your company, or outside of your company. And again, they give you a fresh pair of eyes. You can talk about some of the challenges you're facing, either at work or in personal life, and they'll give you a different flavour. But within a company, it's good to have a mentor, I believe, that's probably not at your level, but maybe in another part of the organisation that might be a level or two higher than you, because they might be more motivating for you. They might be able to help be a champion for you. And also it enables you to connect to a different part of the business that perhaps you wouldn't even connect to. So I do believe that we need mentors around to help people grow, give people new ideas that they may not think about on their own. And as you change roles over time, change your mentor. Mentors are there, and they might help you for a certain period of time. They might help you for a certain particular role you're trying to achieve, or build a specific skill set. So in my experience, I've loved having mentors. I've had a variety of different mentors in my careers. And that's really helped me say, well, I want to give back to my community as well. So I often get asked to be mentored, to be a mentor for people who are not in my function, but have come across me in industry as well. And I'm very happy to chat to people, very happy to, what's on your mind? What are you trying to achieve? Have you thought about X, Y, Z? And I can just offer some different perspectives in order to help them grow and again, become the best they can be. So I think mentorship is for everybody. And if you're a mentor, it does take effort. It does take time out of your day, but it's so rewarding, and you get a lot from it yourself personally, in addition to helping others that you're mentoring as well.
What's your advice for the mentee, the person who might be fearful of even approaching somebody, and they feel like that person's just too busy, I don't want to bother them? So there's that fear. But then also for those that do step up, what is their responsibility and things that they can do to be a good mentee?
So never be afraid to ask. If you don't ask, you'll never know whether it's possible, is my mandate. So please step up. I think people would love to be asked to be a mentor. A lot of people would probably be very willing to accept that. And if someone is too busy, they may decline, but hopefully they'll offer someone else instead. When you're when you're looking for a mentor, of course, I think a lot of the emphasis on the mentee to be prepared for that. What are you looking for in a mentor? What are you hoping to achieve? So you need to think about what is it you'd like to get out of that opportunity. How can a mentor help me? So you need to think about what is it I want to pursue? How could that help my career development or grow personally? So the initial onus is on sort of some of that pre-thinking. So when you do meet with a mentor, again, I advise people to give some background information about your career background. What has been some of the feedback that you've had from others? Where would you like to grow in your career? So they can help you then make the most of the time you have together to give you advice. So there is pre-work, there is some sort of background reading to provide, and that will kickstart what I think is a very productive discussion.
My last question, Chrissy, thank you so much for your time today and sharing all these awesome insights. For the young data scientists just getting started, there are so many different opportunities that they're going to encounter, right? There's so many different industries to go into. And I was wondering if maybe you can just share some last minute piece of advice for them as they're navigating their way and trying to figure out, what am I passionate about? What area should I go into?
Well, I think you said the key word there. What really motivates you? Hopefully, through your studies, you've identified again what you seem to enjoy doing. So there are lots of industries that you can go into, and I think the world, in a way, it's a fantastic opportunity for data scientists now. But I think what is it you're looking to achieve? Again, some roles you can diverse different industries. So you might want to start off in a particular industry and try something different. But if you're coming out of college now, I think go and talk to some people in some companies in those areas. What are they using data scientists for? What are some of the entry roles that you could actually do? What does the work involve? Because you need to go and talk to people who are doing it, I think, to really get a better sense of whether that's going to be for you or not. And I think it's easier to, I think, change career now than it used to be. So if you do try something, it's not for life. You don't think you're stuck with it. I think you'll always learn from whatever you try. You're going to learn something. So what have you got to lose? I think you've got nothing to lose, all to gain. So go and talk to people, find out about some of the career options, not just on paper, but actually talk to people who are doing some of the work. Look at different industries to see whether some of those jobs sound appealing, and just try and get a good sense of what it will involve. Don't get I know there's a lot of competition for new talent, but just weigh everything up. Weigh up the sort of type of job it is, the low sort of where the job's located, the type of industry. What morals do you live by? That where would you like to work? I really enjoyed working in pharma, for example, because I feel as though I'm helping to develop new medicines for patients, and that's really important for me as a person. But of course, everything's important that we're doing. We need all the things in life to help us achieve a better life, whatever that might be. So, but just go with what you believe is right for you, and again, do your best to give it a go and give it all. And if it works well for you, great. You'll see yourself grow as a person, and your career can take many different paths. So we don't know what the next jobs are going to be like in 10 years' time. So the actual new roles in the future are actually being created around you, and in some way, our new graduates now will be actually creating new industries in the future. What a great opportunity that is! So I really think they've got such wonderful opportunities, and I wish everyone the best in this space.
Chrissy, that's super encouraging, and thank you so much for sharing your insights. For those that want to connect with you, I'd like to just ask you some further questions later on. What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, they can contact me on LinkedIn. I'm there, and I can share my details if that would be helpful as well.
Wonderful. And for those listening in, I'm going to create a short URL to get you right over to Chrissy's LinkedIn account. You type in ex.pn/Fletcher, Fletcher. That will redirect over to Chrissy's LinkedIn profile so you can connect with her there. Chrissy, thank you so much for being on the Data Talk show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Data Talk podcast. We share new shows every week, and you can find the full catalog of previous episodes, including YouTube videos, on our Experian news blog. You can get access to the full catalog by going to experian.com/datatalk. And we always love hearing from our community, so if you have any comments or suggestions for future shows or guests you'd like to hear from, please let us know. You can leave a comment on iTunes, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at Experian Data Lab. You can also email me directly. My email is michael.delgado@experian.com. Take care, and we'll chat next week.